Airbnb occupancy nationally, and I don't know about globally, but certainly here in the US is not high. I think it's in the 40% or lower. Um, how are things going in your hotels?
The hotel we've had in Palm Springs for 2 months a year, it does over 100% occupancy paid cancellations. It does an
Mm,
annual occupancy of 87%.
wow. Hello and welcome to Profit and Property. I'm your host, Austin Maskett. I've spent the last 10 years helping very wealthy families buy, manage, and sell multifamily and industrial properties as an investment director and portfolio manager. My guest today is Michael Johnston. He's joining us from Lisbon, Portugal. He spent the last 20 years in real estate private equity, mostly in hospitality, buying, building, and managing hotels all over the world. Michael, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Pleasure, definitely.
So, love to get into your story, figure out, how you got into the hospitality game and, um, see where the market's going.
Absolutely. So the short version, uh, the Cliff Notes version is like you, I'm from Newport Beach, California. The slightly longer version is that my family, my heritage is Swedish, but I was born in Aruba, randomly enough, and then moved to Mexico. And when I was 5 years old, we moved to Yellowstone National Park. So my father randomly was CEO of Yellowstone National Park. And from there, we moved to Newport Beach and had a very traditional Southern California upbringing. Newport Beach, then graduated from USC, was living in LA for a year at the height of the tech bubble. And after about a year, I thought the world's a big place and I wanted to see it. So I quit my job, did one of those iconic trips around Europe where everyone's wearing their Greek letter and had their backpack and visited many countries over like three months. And I started to realize that the countries I liked the best were a little bit off the beaten path. And while I loved my time there, I realized that there's not really a job, at least at that time. Probably there is now, but at that time, traveling. So came back to the States, moved to Aspen to avoid responsibility for a little bit of time. Uh, Becoming a Peace Corps volunteer, which took me to Ukraine. Spent 2 years in Ukraine, uh, and then did my MBA. And that was really kind of the post MBA was my journey in private equity. So ended up working for the largest institutionally backed private equity fund. Moved back to Kyiv, uh, and then from there uh, ended up becoming head of private equity for KPMG, overseeing a lot of work they do with global private equity funds for the former Soviet Union, and then ended up becoming CEO of what was the largest hotel investment company in Russia at the time. So that's a little bit of the longer version.
So you lived in Russia for how long then?
11 years.
11 years in Russia. What was that like? I mean,
Yeah.
what era was that?
So Ukraine was 2002 to 2004, and then again in 2006 to 2009, and then Russia was 2011 to 2022.
So what was going on in the
So
country
I
then? Like,
I think there,
what was it
yeah,
what was it like being an American
I found
there?
both of them amazing in both countries. I thought I was really kind of riding this wave of transfer. For example, when I first got to Ukraine, this 2002, I was walking around. We went to a small town called Cherkasy. It's like a regional center town, 250,000 people. And the people were wearing these fur hats, like what you would see in a movie. And I thought that was just like a Hollywood kind of propaganda thing but that was a real thing at the time. And I went to a club first night. It was much younger then, and with a couple of new friends, and I told them to go find the seats, and I'll go get the first round of drinks. Found two fake blonde Ukrainian girls and said, "Do you speak English?" And they replied, "Chut chut," which I had no idea what that meant, but it meant kind of. And then I said, "I need three vodka drinks." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, no problem." And they told that to the bartender. The bartender looked at me and in broken English, he's like, something equivalent of $11. I'm like, "Okay, $11 for three drinks of vodka is okay." And he put three bottles of vodka on the bar. That was my first day in Ukraine. Yeah. So, and then, yeah, so and that was just like, as a 23 or 24-year-old kid, those type of adventures are mind blowing. Having the opportunity to, then Peace Corps is great for this. And we spent 3 months in a village, they studying Ukrainian for like 5 hours a day, 6 days a week. And the people in the village had never seen an American. So it was like mind blowing to them, mind blowing to us. And then coming back, doing my MBA and coming back and living in the capital was fantastic. I'm really kind of living a dream. I just finished my MBA, having an opportunity to work in private equity. Uh, and yeah, so it's fantastic. And then when I moved to Russia, it was kind of that second stage of development. Yeah. In Ukraine, it was still really, it was an earlier time. It was really kind of a wild east, really just emerging from kind of 10-year chaos post-Soviet Union, where everyone's just trying to get their footing. By the time I got to Moscow, it was much more developed, much more stable, but still an adventure. And it's just fantastic.
So you're in Ukraine from what age to what age, and then Russia from what age to what age?
Okay, the first time 2002, probably 24, 25 to
Wow.
26. Did my MBA, came back probably 28 to about 30. Maybe 30, early 30s I left, and then came back 34, I guess. So to Russia. And then I'm 48 now, so up to probably 3 really.
Wow. So most of your adult life has been spent outside of the US then, mostly in Eastern Europe, Russia
Yeah,
area,
I
right?
and then also I did an academic year in Switzerland, and then post COVID. So I was locked down. I really kind I left Russia in 2022. Obviously, there a big conflict between these two countries broke out, but I had already predominantly had been living in Western Europe. So I went to on March 6th. So on early March, I had no idea. Uh, I thought I had many 3-year Russian visas, but the last one I had was, yeah, I thought it was going to expire in July because I got it in July 3 years before. And a
Mm.
friend of mine had called me in late, kind of very end of February and said, asked if I wanted to climb Mount Blanc with him. Said, "Oh, that sounds great. When are you going to do it?" He's like, "I'm doing it in, early February or early July." And I said, "Okay, well, look, I know my visa expires, and let me just check to see when my visa is finished." And I look at it and it says March 6th. Oh, that's crazy. I couldn't figure out for a while, like for a while, like if I have a 3-year visa, why that I got in July, why is it finished in, March 6th? It turns out, if you've ever heard that people, like most countries, will only grant visas up to 6 months uh, to the expiration. And my passport was expiring in September. So even though I got the visa 3 years before in July, it ended 6 months prior to the expiration of my passport. So
Uh,
I was kind of like, yeah, yeah. So I kind of scrambled to pack a lot of stuff to, and this is like another global phenomenon was happening right about that time in January and February 2020. So I started to feel, that the world's, kind of, it's talking about COVID-19. And this is, right when I was heading back, I had to rush out of Russia to get back to the States because my visa was expiring. I think it's been long enough to say now that maybe a week or so before that, I was very sick. I'm going to assume that was the flu. And I'm not, at all saying I was a super spreader, but I did have to get on an airplane with a little bit of a cold to get back to the States. And I got back on March 6th. And it took me 2 days to get a new passport, 2 or 3 days to get a new passport. And then I felt at that time, especially, kind of slowly like shutting down. Like there was restrictions on where you can eat, restrictions on where on riding the subway. And I was in contact with the consulate in Washington, the Russian consulate in Washington, D.C., to try to get my new 3-year Russian visa. And every day we're chatting, and they're like, Michael, no problem. Then on March 14th, 2020, they're like, don't worry. They called me in the morning. Your passport's on Oksana's desk. We know her. She's our girl. It's going to get approved today. And 3 hours later, they called me saying, sorry, the border's closed. And so, and this is peak COVID, insanity, or whatever you want to call it. So, and it's amazing how things like that can drastically change the course of your life. So, like everyone, I spent several months locked down, kind of just waiting for things to normalize, and that ended up leading to the next, my current business now. So, with a business partner that I've known for 30 years, they're both from Newport Beach, California. I'm Swedish heritage, he's Irish heritage. We ended up finding this beautiful estate in Ireland, in the west coast of Ireland. And we visited it this is September 2020. Like, and that wasn't that long ago, but it's amazing to like kind of like reminisce on those days. We got on an airplane to go to Ireland in September. There was more stewardess than passengers on that plane. We flew from LA to Dublin, and we got
For
into
like 20
Dublin,
bucks, right?
and oh, it was no, it's nothing. Of course, like, yeah, I was sleeping once. I was sleeping on the plane, and my mask like a little bit got below my nose, and the guy's like, "You got to put that back on your nose right away, like, like I'm gonna kill someone." And then I got to Ireland, and the guy's like, "Why are you here?" Like shocked that I just took a plane. I'm like, "Well, I'm going to look at a hotel in the Western Ireland. We're looking to buy it." He's like, "Well, I don't know if that's essential travel or not." I'm like, "Well, I wish you would have told me that 9 hours ago before I got on the plane." Like, you know, this is kind of the wrong time to tell me that. Yeah, I have a
Right.
PCR test. I'm kind of done everything you wanted me to do. And he didn't like my attitude, so he put me in a little bit of a holding cell while he was trying to confirm with the management of the hotel that this is actually a legit trip. And
Oh,
luckily,
wow.
the manager picked up. He's like, "Look, yeah." He's like, "I don't know if this, you know, with that Irish charm." He's like, "I don't know if this guy's a prick or not, but we need to sell this hotel. We're him. Let him in." And so we went to go look at the hotel and fell in love with it. And course of six, ended up closing on the property and did this crazy, like full renovation in 6 months. Um, Opened with all the other hotels, and when all the other hotels were allowed to open during COVID. Uh, and that was just an amazing kind of journey and success. And I ended up living in Ireland probably for 2 years, the better part of 2 years. Like 80% of my time I was in Ireland. We ended up making privileged enough to be invited into what I think is the best membership, like best collection of luxury boutique hotels and restaurants in the world, called Relais and
Mm,
Chateau. So in our
mm,
second year of operation, we were accepted into Relais and Chateau. And based
wow.
off the success of that investment, we ended up buying another property in Burgundy, France, which is also a member of Relais and Chateau, beautiful 900-year-old abbey. I think
Wow.
personally, it's the nicest boutique hotel in the nicest wine region in the world. And then for the last 2 years, had spent probably 70% of my time in Burgundy. So, and now I'm
Wow.
in Lisbon. So, yeah,
Amazing. So let's back up a little bit. So going back to the COVID era when you bought that hotel in Ireland, the time
yeah,
is COVID. No one is staying anywhere other than maybe Airbnbs and their own home, right? They're not moving around much.
yeah,
The
and
revenue
not
of this
even
property
Airbnb,
must have
just their own
been
home. Yeah,
right. The
yeah,
revenue of this property must have been 0, right? So how did you make sense of the deal? How did you get into it? Like, tell me the unpack it a little bit for me, and then how did you buy
yeah.
it? Did you use investor funds or did you use your own funds? Let's walk through that if you don't mind.
Uh, yeah, I'll say, one very nice shareholder that believed in us.
Okay.
So, and so how probably too much Irish whiskey when we got there and fell over the place. So, uh, if we look at it from a pure real estate play, it was on the market for 7.5 million prior to COVID. Even though it was financially not doing great from a real estate point of view, it's 163 acres, 26 bedrooms, a ton of upside. It hadn't had a serious renovation in over 15 years. So it was, really, um, it was desperate for a full, renovation plan. So
Mhm.
looking at some of the comparables, what we thought it had, when we looked at, there was a lot of things we really liked about it. It was, even though there was a great manager on property, it was still lacking some basic systems that you would hope to see in a best in practice operated hotel. Like, the one thing I look right away is like, how are they doing their rate management, the revenue management? And here it's like, whether it's Wednesday or Saturday, whether it's the off season or the peak season, it's the same rate the whole year round. So you're like, okay,
Mm,
well, clearly there's an opportunity to drive better revenue from the room revenue. And in a hotel, that's your most profitable department and your highest revenue generating department almost always. And so even before the market knew what we had done to the property in terms of renovation, we were able to drive over 100% increase in room revenue just through more effective revenue management. So we saw in the first year there was going to be a lot of opportunity for to 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 monetize low hanging fruit, and it ended up being a really good investment for us. The first 5 months we returned 9% or 10% of invested capital. And if we looked at some of the comparables, we didn't even know at that time that we can, aspire to be a Relais and Chateau, but we were uh, part of an existing membership called Ireland Blue Book, and we still are very proud members of that. And when we
mm.
looked at some of the other comparables that we thought with a robust capital improvement plan, we can easily be in that comp set. Those properties were doing much better. So it gave us
So
the
so right
confidence. And
out
then
the
also, yeah,
so right out the
I'm
gate,
listening.
you just changed the pricing from a like seasonal perspective, and that increased your revenue significantly. Is that what you're saying, right?
Over 100%.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
So
And then
yeah.
you had
So
the
yeah,
opportunity to
yeah,
renovate it, right? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, exactly. So we had two phases of renovation, but the market had no idea what we had done before they came. And because it was COVID, we were very limited in what we can do. They were very strict. We were able to bring in contractors, but in terms of getting photographers there and doing all this other stuff and doing kind of a lot of the promotional activities you would hope to do if you're running under like in business as usual. We were a little bit limited, so the market wasn't fully aware with to the extent of the renovation we had done. So the biggest drivers in year one were a much more sophisticated approach to revenue management, and we had something like 120% revenue. And then also, once the guests came there and once the guests arrived and they saw the work we had done, they were blown away by the level of that really is a testament to my business partner's wife, who led the design, and to the tradesmen that are in Ireland. Ireland, and especially this part of Ireland, they're artisans, they're tradesmen, a lot of bohemians there, but they really love their craft. And so, people would walk in and they'd be like, Alan Fitzgerald did those floors. We know Alan did those floors, because you just look at the quality, and that's just like that. They know that he's the guy that did it. And whether it was the woodwork or whatever. Yeah. So
That's amazing.
that project, yeah.
So how did
But I
you
gotta
get
say,
the
like,
word out
one thing, yeah.
once the property was built, right? Like once you had it all renovated, how did you market it? How did you get it out to people to say, "Hey, come see our new hotel, come stay here, come get a drink, come have a meal"? What did that look like?
Uh, Multivariate, but we were working with a really good digital marketing company out of Cork. So Cork it's local, so it's about an hour away. It's the second largest city in Ireland, if you don't count Belfast. And it's about an hour away from our property. And there's a great digital marketing company called Noise, and ads, Facebook and Instagram ads, and then a, a much sorry, yeah, a much higher engagement in our own social media, and then word of mouth. So word of mouth, 100% for our restaurant. Our restaurant, we were full every day in the summer. But I would say, of all the things, maybe when I reflect back on that time, the most surreal was doing the renovation, because this was again from January to June. In Ireland, like many places, they had a curfew. The tradesmen can be there at 7 o'clock in the morning, but at 5 o'clock sharp, they had to be off the property. And so I'm the only one at this like huge Georgian manor on 163 acres from 5 or 6 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning. It's just me. And, I got a massive wine cellar. Every day, wine's going down a little bit. At the evenings, I would put on these big fires, play some music. And the first month I thought, oh, like I'm the Great Gatsby here. Like, this is amazing. And then the second to the fifth month, I thought I was in The Shining, if you've ever seen that.
That's
And then
hilarious.
so we have a poster. There's a famous scene in The Shining, which is like end when it's panning out and he sees that he had always been the caretaker at The Shining. And movie, and we have a poster of that up our grand piano as kind of like an inside joke from that time.
That's so funny. The Shining was actually filmed not far from me, so I've watched it many times. Great movie. But
Great movie,
so
great director. Yeah.
you've really done a lot of things, right? So when you found the property, you got out there and you bought it with, so you
Yeah.
had the vision for it.
Yeah.
Two, you had the right marketing and you had the right know-how as far as, revenue management and that sort of thing. But you also have a restaurant on on site. So how did you handle like
Yeah.
making sure that that restaurant was lights out? Like, did you just keep the chef that was there, or what did you do there?
Oh, no. Some Like, what's the expression? Hire slow and fire fast. Um, the with all due respect, if he ever listens to this, the chef that was there was a train wreck. So some stories I probably can't get into on if this is a family friendly podcast, I probably shouldn't get into some of those stories that I realized from the chef that had, we knew it was a full repositioning. And
Mhm.
oftentimes when you segmentation of a business, you just have to change the whole team. And we knew that most likely we would. The GM that was there, lovely guy, would have loved for if he would have stayed another 20 years, but he had been there for 9 years, and like it's a grind of a business where, and he was so dedicated that after working 9 years, in the summer, he would maybe take 1 or 2 days off out of 6 months, and it would be 15-hour days. So
Wow.
he quote unquote hung up his spurs after the first season. But for the restaurant, we were very lucky to recruit a fantastic chef, French chef that had lived in the region for 18 years. His wife was Irish, his kids are half Irish, his roots now are in Ireland. And he just had this great cuisine that was kind of a mix of the best Irish, comfort food that you would want, and a little hint of French gastronomy. And
Wow.
the locals just loved it, and our hotel guests loved it. Yeah. So yeah,
So
and
how'd you
one of
find
the awards
him?
I'm very proud. Yeah. Huh?
How'd you find
I
him?
recruit through a recruiter. So
Mm.
what I've I've now, when I was in Russia, we developed nine hotels in 9 cities, often very new markets. I've learned kind of quickly what's the best way to try to build a team, and here we were able to find some really trusted recruiters that already had the developed networks in these areas.
That's amazing. So you attribute your success, you were able to do so many things with that property, including, somewhat of a restaurateur and redevelopment and, improved management. Um, and you attribute that to your uh, experience in Russia or growing up in sort of a real estate family, or where do you think you got the skills you did to be so successful?
I think a little bit of everything, but and what's the expression? Smart people learn from their mistakes, and successful people learn from the mistakes of others. I unfortunately did not. I've made if you have the accident tree, I've hit every branch on the way down, and I've often repeated the same mistake many times. And I think it's just luckily that people around me are a little bit patient, and and having a little bit of common sense, and being a little bit humbled by my mistakes, and just trying to get better, really just trying to get better and seeing what works and what doesn't. Um, and a little bit of an instinct to having grown up in hospitality and working in it for a long time, and especially going into new places. I'm very curious about how people do things there, whether there is Ireland or Russia or Ukraine or France or now in Lisbon. Yeah. And so it's very interesting to me.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for that insight. So now your hotels are all running up and running. They're doing well. You got high occupancy. Who's staying at your hotels? Who should stay at your hotels? Maybe some of your listeners want to stay at your hotels. How can they find you?
Yeah, and so we have two hotels now. Both of them are members of Relais and Chateau, as I had mentioned. The one in Ireland is called Lisard Estate. It's in West Cork. I really think West Cork is the postcard of Ireland. If you've never been to Ireland, and it's impossible not to love. It's kind of like, when people think of California, they're probably thinking Laguna Beach or Newport Beach. That's the equivalent of West Cork. It's just iconically Irish with the rolling green countryside and the jagged coastline and the really charming, nice, hospitable people and the stout beer. So that's Lissard. And then the property in Burgundy is called Abbey de la Boussière. Now, if you're French, I apologize. I was speaking with a French gentleman last week, and he's like, "What's your hotel called?" I'm like, "Oh, it's Abbey de la Boussière." He's like, "And where is it?" I'm like, "Oh, it's 20 minutes from Dijon and 20 minutes from Beaune." He's like, "No, no, where is it?" I'm like, "Well, it's in Le Boussière, which is not even a village. It's like a hamlet." He's like, "No, no, no. Where is it really?" I'm like, "That's in Le Boussière." And I'm like, pull it up on our Instagram account. He's like, "No, no, no, no. That's La Boussière." With his accent. I'm like, "Oh, come on." Like, he's like, "You really need to know how to pronounce the village of 150 people." And he said it in a very charming way, but so yeah. So that's really what I would consider. I love Burgundy. The people there are salt of the earth. I think if you like wine, I don't think there is a better wine region in the world. That is the mecca of Pinot Noir. And growing up, being in the hotel industry, taste a lot of wine and a lot of food. And I never liked the American Chardonnay. I always found it a little bit too oaky and too buttery, too heavy.
Hmm.
You go to Burgundy and it's the cleanest. They don't even call it a Chardonnay, just a white Burgundy, but they're all Chardonnay. And it's the nicest white in the world. So those are the two
Amazing.
properties. Uh, Moving forward, we're this year our goal is we're launching a kind of new concept. It's something similar. It's high-end luxury hospitality, but learning from all the kind of the pitfalls of what could be from a investment and operating point of view. Uh, yeah, and when you want to be a five-star property and you want to be a member of Relais and Chateau and you want to have a Michelin star, they're very operationally complex properties. And so we're toying with a new model that is still boutique, 30 to 35 units, um, but just a little bit more streamlined. So,
Hmm.
but that's, we're working on it now, and hopefully we launch that either realistically Q1 next year. And then we're looking at a couple other hotel investments, one of them in Lisbon and one of them in Palm Springs.
That's great. I think you told me about the Palm Springs property in the past, right? Are
Yeah,
you guys seeking
yeah,
investment for that one?
yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So, our family business, we have a hotel in Palm Springs. We've had it for 35 years. I love Palm Springs, and while I live in Lisbon and I enjoy my time here, I would love to have a valid reason to spend, more time in Palm Springs. Uh, Although as a California native, maybe less than 6 months. I'm not sure I want that 13% California tax, but to spend 3 or 4 months in Palm Springs a year, and my brother's there, my sister's there, and so for us to grow a family business together, to continue to grow our business would be really a dream.
Absolutely. So if listeners are interested in investing in that property, how can they get involved?
Uh, they can find me very easy on either LinkedIn or on my website. My company is called the Aspen Company. So very easy, especially if you're from Colorado, Aspen, Colorado. It's the aspencompany.co. So CO as in Colorado as well. Or if you go on LinkedIn, Michael Johnston, and the Aspen Company. I'm sure you can find me there, and you can just DM me or you can connect with me. Would be very happy to walk you through that opportunity.
Perfect. Great. So what's next for the hotel market? I know everyone's talking about Airbnbs are very slow right now, oversaturated. Where do you see the market going in the next, 12
Yeah,
to
I agree with
36
that.
months?
And I think we talked about that on our last call. My brother has an Airbnb. Not as a primary business. He just, he bought a house and he uses it and it works very well for him. But as an investment, if it's I would be very concerned just from the regulatory point of view. So
Mm,
you know, in LA, because there was a lot of pressure that, you know, Airbnbs were because of the constraint in first the supply, and now a lot of people are converting their Airbnbs and monetizing them. And some people are, you know, having 50 to 100 units. It's putting pressure on the rental prices. And that I
mm,
think can often lead to regulatory changes, which, and if that was a core business, then, you know, like for me, I would not feel comfortable with that risk. I, as a hotel developer and hotelier, I've never, yeah, like in Steve Jobs' biography by Isaac Walterson. It's like never let another idea or business, yeah, never let the threat of something cannibalize, you know, your business. Just if things are going to evolve, and if you're afraid that something might cannibalize a business, it's going to happen anyway. I've from the hotel point of view, I I've used Airbnb a couple times when I've had flats in the past. I've used it as a way to kind of subsidize my rent when I wasn't there. So I think as a platform, there's a lot of value in there. And you know, I kind of a little libertarian side of me, I don't want there to be regulatory changes in it, because if you buy something and you own it, you should have the right to rent it out short term if you want. That's kind of been my uh, position on it. But I think people are looking for uh, people always want value. Uh, there's going to be the families that I think like the Airbnb model. I think that my focus is more on what's happening directly in hospitality. I
mm,
do see a lot of changes in terms of, you know, what being more in line with what the guests really want and cutting out a lot of the fat of what they don't want. Like, for example, if I use our two hotels in Ireland, if I want to be or Ireland, France, if I want to be a five-star property in Ireland, not only do I need someone on the door to open the door for you when you walk in the reception, but I need someone on the gate to wave to you when you get through the gate. It's about from the front gate to the manor, it's almost a mile.
mm.
Do guests really care that I'm waving to you when you walk, you know, or when you drive in? So I think, you know, what's the kind of California expression, be to to catch a wave, you have to be in front of the wave. And I'm always kind of interested in the emerging trends that are happening in real estate, in hospitality. And if we look at, you know, the last 10 years, you know, there was a mega trend in co-working, and then failed WeWork IPO, and then COVID kind of killed that. But maybe that reemerges into, you know, how can people improve, uh, you know, how can people improve the work experience for people, you know, for people working in offices? Or, you know, I was fortunate to help start or in to help. I was a like pretty much first investor into a home sharing business that we launched in New York. And at the time, like, you know, now there's a lot of them, and the barriers to entry into that space are not that big. But if you wanted to move to, you know, this was 2018, to New York, you had to pay first month, last month, 1 month security, 15% to agent. So you're over 4 months out of pocket just before you get in there. You
Right.
have a lease that you can't break. You can't sublet it to someone, because if you sublet it to someone and that person doesn't pay, you're still legally obligated for the rent. And so the model was very simple. We would take long-term leases and do a 30-day minimum stay. That we weren't in violation to any sort of hotel. You didn't need a hotel license if it was over 30 days. So it was in compliance with all the regulatory issues in New York. And 30-day fees. And that was widely popular with a lot of millennials and a lot of people that were mobile, that wanted flexibility and didn't want all the cost of the IKEA furniture on their balance sheet in case they, you know, had to move somewhere. So, and that's, yeah. So going back to hotels, I don't know. I have one idea. I don't want to share too much of it yet, but where I think that there is a mega trend shifting in hospitality.
Okay. Um, yeah, because I think, you're certainly in a different level or echelon than your
Yeah.
average Airbnb, right? You provide a lot more services, so I imagine you're renting
Yeah.
to a different um, class uh, of person or
Well,
guest.
I I certainly can see some of our guests would utilize uh, an Airbnb for if they're traveling somewhere else or for a different reason. I could see so, but my advice for people that are operating Airbnbs, think about it more like a hotel. I've stayed in Airbnbs where there's no shampoo and conditioner. Like, it's not hard. I I think of the most basic things that when you go to a mid-market hotel that you would expect to see. You know, fresh towels, shampoo, conditioner, no extra. Don't leave your food in the fridge. Clear things out so when they come there, it feels like a commercial property. I think that that's the biggest issue with Airbnbs now is that the kind of single owner operator of the Airbnb that might use it, Airbnb it for 3 to 6 months, or maybe less. They're not
Mhm.
thinking about it like that. No.
So what about occupancy? And I think, this will probably be my last question because we need to wrap up. But
Yeah.
you know, Airbnb occupancy nationally, and I don't know about globally, but certainly here in the US is not high. I think it's in the 40% or lower. Um, how are things going in your hotels, here in the US and abroad?
So,
Um, are you seeing
so
better occupancy rates than that, or is
uh,
it just a
Palms,
function of the market?
our hotel, the hotel we've had in Palm Springs for 2 months a year, it does over 100% occupancy paid cancellations. It does an
Mm,
annual occupancy of 87%.
wow.
So, and I think Palm Springs is just a really good market in general. So I don't think we're an outlier there. The 2 months that it has above 100% is because of Coachella is running 2 weekends now and Stagecoach. So it's just,
Yep.
and that's kind of the peak time people want to go to the desert. You have all the snowbirds from Canada and other areas coming down there. We have a hotel in Tucson that does, probably 83% annual occupancy. It's a very good market. Uh, our two properties in Europe, which is a different business, that's my family business. The ones in Europe are the business with my business partner. Those are destination hotels. So, we have 6 months of the year that we're running 85 to 90% at a very good rate. The challenge in that business is how do we run a 65% other 6 months? And then there we have to sacrifice rate. So you're definitely you're getting more value if you come in the off season. But of
Mhm.
course, it's probably it's the off season for a reason. The weather's probably not as good. There's not as much to do. Uh, and well, for our two destination hotels, for 4 months a year, we close 2 days a week, so we can run one team. So we tend to close Monday and Tuesday. That way, we can keep one team working for the 5 days a week.
Mm.
So that's from an operational point of view. And then maybe we'll close 3 weeks in January to give some of our employees time off so they can go on vacation, and we can do a little bit of maintenance work on the property.
Interesting. So you're taking advantage of the times that are the lowest and changing rates to make sure you're at peak
Yeah,
occupancy as much as possible.
yeah. But now one thing that I've learned from this hotel, and this is kind of has in a large part motivated me or inspired me to come up with this kind of hybrid model that we're on right now. is that on both of my properties in Europe, we're full every weekend the whole year. So
Mhm.
while we discount, certainly in the off season, our rates discounted, but not 50%.
Mm.
We know in both these markets, and I think that this is probably very consistent, we're going to be 100% full every Saturday, be 85% full on Fridays. So now, how can we create a model that we can be profitable every month based off those inputs? And that's what we're
Mm.
working on right now.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to hearing more about the deals you're doing, and maybe have you on the show again here soon.
With pleasure. Thank you so much, Austin.
Thanks for listening to Profit and Property. I've been your host, Austin Masket, and thanks for listening all the way to the end. Be sure to subscribe if you're new here and look for new episodes every week.